All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. The Florida Governor Ron DeSantis campaigned here in South Carolina today, trying to rally support among veterans, a key constituency in this state. Now, as the candidates ramp up appearances in many of the early voting states, including here, the race has actually been fairly stable, I think it's fair to say. Donald Trump continues to hold a major lead over his rivals, both nationally and in early key states. And nationally, Trump poll numbers are higher than all of his other challengers combined. Now, several of his rivals are struggling to try to gain some momentum here. For example, the former Vice President, Mike Pence, spent almost the same amount as he took in the last 3 months. And the super PAC that is supporting Senator Tim Scott has canceled its fall ad buys, all of it, some $40 million. Mick, Bob Cusack, let's start with you. Mick, this is your home state. You've known Tim Scott for quite some time. The PAC, of course, is separate from the actual campaign, but that's not a good sign.
No, it's not a good sign, but there's a little bit more depth and texture to it. The statement that came out from the super PAC said they were pulling the money down because they didn't think it was going to do any good. They've spent a bunch of money and haven't moved the needle. And what they said is it looks like people are just not ready right now to leave Donald Trump. Tim Scott still has a good bit of money. The last number I saw was that he was in second place with like $13 million. That was more than anybody else other than Donald Trump on the Republican side of the ledger. So it's almost like it's a practical consideration. We're not going to spend money in October and November when the first primaries, or at least caucuses, aren't until January or February. So it's not the same as Mike Pence, who's running out of money. It's not the same as, the folks like Asa Hutchinson, who I don't understand if they got any money to begin with. Folks are going to stay in this race, to the larger point, as long as they have the dough. That's what it comes down to, because anything can happen to Donald Trump. They're waiting for something to happen to him, and if he drops out of the race or something really happens to his numbers, they want to be around to pick up the pieces. As long as they have dough, they're going to stay in.
But Bob, there's a question, as Mick just pointed out, exactly how much money Mike Pence has left. Where does he go from here?
Listen, he's got a very difficult road. We are 3 months, less than that, to Iowa. And I think a number of these candidates, whether DeSantis has to do very well in Iowa, or he could be out. And certainly when you go down to South Carolina with Nikki Haley, and certainly Scott, they've got to do well. Remember, in 2016, Marco Rubio had some momentum, was trying to catch Trump. And what happened? They went to Florida, and Trump throttled him in Florida, and that was the end of Rubio. So you got to win your home state. And right now, as you mentioned, Blake, Trump is dominating these states.
Yeah. Charlie, is it time for some of these candidates to get out? There's pressure on some of them to do just that.
Well, of course. And by the way, with all this money, I'm not sure the timing of when they should spend this. But let me tell you what they should use the money for. They need to tear the bark off of Donald Trump. They have to knock down the top dog. I don't know what they're doing with their messaging, because right now Trump is going to win this primary unless they give a strong reason to fire Donald Trump. They haven't been doing that. I mean, Chris Christie has, but he hasn't caught fire yet. But they're going to need to draw that sharp contrast. I just haven't seen it happen. They're going to need to use that money to message why Trump, is too great a risk for the Republican Party. And I have just not seen that from enough of them so far.
All right. And then there's, on the other side, obviously we know President Biden is, that side of the race is just about over. But then there's been questions about this shadow campaign, whether or not Gavin Newsom, the California governor, has been running one. We know that he's going to be going to China in the upcoming weeks. And today, Gavin Newsom said, I'm going to be going to Israel as well. Here was the tweet he sent out, the post, whatever you want to call it. He said, I'm on my way to Israel. I'll be meeting with those impacted by the horrific terrorist attacks and offering California support. Kurt, what's going on with Gavin Newsom here? It's like Gavin Newsom's world tour.
Yeah, I mean, between China and Israel, I mean, if you didn't know any better, you would say that these are the acts of someone who's running on the national stage for the highest office in all the land. There's no other real reason why the governor of a state would be going to China and be going to Israel, especially at a moment like this, unless you wanted to stoke that conversation of being a part of that presidential conversation and discussion. And I think for Newsom, I think he's kind of playing it two ways. He's on one hand saying, I'm completely behind President Biden. I'm doing everything I can to support the president and get him reelected. But on the other, he has put himself in a position that if for some reason it ends up not being Joe Biden, again, a year's a long way from now, a lot can happen, he is positioning himself as the heir apparent to be the leading Democrat.
Lauren, Newsom's world tour.
Oh my gosh, this guy. I mean, look, I'm from California, Blake. I used to work in California politics. I understand Gavin Newsom is pro Gavin Newsom, and I'll do a lot to prove it to everybody. But look, he would not be a good choice to replace Biden. I know Biden didn't beat him in 2020. He beat almost every other potential candidate that people have thrown out there. But look, he oversaw some of the worst pandemic era policies in the country, the longest school closures except for New Mexico, shut down businesses. It doesn't look good in hindsight, and the worst homelessness crisis in the country, the biggest border crisis in the country. So when you take the magnifying glass to California, things are not going to be great for Democrats. However, he's a very skilled orator. He's good in a debate, I understand. And by the way, I think it's great he's going to Israel. They need as much attention as they can possibly get. They're facing an existential crisis. I don't understand the China trip as much, but we'll probably talk about that another time.
Bob, what do you make of it?
Well, listen, I think it's a shrewd move by Newsom, but to Lauren's point, I mean, I've talked to, I haven't lived in California, but I've talked to a number of Democrats who live in California, and they aren't impressed with Newsom. Obviously had a recall effort, but he's keeping himself in the mix. We're talking about him, and he's going to run for president. Maybe it's not in 2024, but down the road, he's going to run.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.